Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share another contemplative focus with you. And the focus that I wanted to share with you today is who am I with my stories? Let's consider who am I with my stories. The mind is the instrument with which we create our unique versions of reality. What we think and believe creates our experience. From formlessness to form, from the unmanifest to the manifest, we create our realities. And that's just the simple truth of the everyday, moment to moment existence of every human being on the planet. So, what kind of stories do we run through our minds every day and repeat over and over again? And how does that affect us? How do we create ourselves in relation to that? Well, from my experiences, we create ourselves as happy, sad, right, wrong, important, not important, and so forth and so on, according to what we think. As simple as that. So it's simple, but what do you do with that? It's like people will tell you, think positive and be positive and uplift yourself, which is true. That's very true. And it's also true that we create our own stories. We are the creators. It's not coming from out there. And that's really the major point of this who am I with my stories, is that we have the power if we meditate and develop our power, our balance, so that our power can come to the front and reverse the dominant negative polarity that is true for all human beings when they're at birth, and move it and develop the power of the positive polarity in our meditations until it becomes dominant. Once it equals and becomes dominant to the negative polarity, our stories change dramatically, and then we can start to actually orchestrate what we want to think. We can change what we think because we have developed the power to do so. And if you were to take this to heart and try it out, the first thing I would say is it's not going to happen overnight, because the power of the negative polarity, which is by default uh, through the process of consciousness contracting itself into form, is by default dominant. And that's just all there is to it. We are totally invested in separation. There's me, there's you, there's the world outside, and how I react to or interpret the world outside myself is going to determine how I feel about myself, how I define myself, how I belong or don't belong, and so forth and so on. So it's a very powerful process that we're talking about here, and it will determine how we interact and how well we can express ourselves, and how creative we can be, and how much we can demonstrate to those around us something positive as well. And so what I find here is that after years and years of meditation, I remember many years ago, as my balance increased, and when that point happened, when the positive polarity from my meditations was equal in power to the negative polarity, there was a shift. It was kind of very hard to describe, but I know that from that point on, whenever I had a negative thought, it was like more and more unique, more and more, where did this come from? And because I experienced myself in meditation as the same source consciousness that everything is, all the stories that would say anything otherwise don't make any sense, and they lose their power. And that includes commentary from another human being, because in truth, there's only you seeing you, experiencing you in relation to whatever you're perceiving. And if that perception is at another human being or at a situation involving human beings, your commentary to yourself about that excuse me, is going to be how it's a window into how you define yourself, and how you are creating yourself. And if it's angry and negative and condemning and so forth and so on, exclusive, then you need to look at that and say, well, look, if I'm creating myself in this way in relation to what I'm seeing, I'm creating myself in a very negative way. And that negativity, that anger, if there's anger, that judgment, if there's judgment, it's really only affecting you. And it's not going to be a very positive experience in relation to that, because you're the one saying that and you're the one becoming that. So if you keep falling into habitual patterns of judgment and anger and so forth, or isolating yourself from people in general, then that will be what will manifest as your experience in life. And you're the creator of it. And this is really what I thought was kind of funny after many years of meditation, of course, was that it's right there in front of me. It's always been there. And yet, until I had the capacity to see clearly, it was like, to me, the world outside myself was affecting me. It was judging me. It was giving me pleasure. It was giving me pain. It was making me good. It was making me bad. And all this and so forth and so on. But really, it was me doing all of that. And so as I became more and more aware of that, and as I became more and more focused on creating my stories consciously and sticking to that, then my life experience changed radically, and it still does to this day. Not that there isn't my ups and downs and challenges and so forth and so on, but it's my challenges. It's my stories. It's not something else outside myself that's doing anything to me. It's just me doing it to myself. And so when I find that there's something less than exemplary in my state of being, if it brings me down in any way whatsoever, I immediately look at what that is that I'm creating and dive into the source of that. Because the truth is, when we come into manifestation, when we're born as human beings, we bring with us many, many lifetimes of experience, and all those lifetimes we've created all kinds of stories with us, and whether we're conscious of it or not, they're with us. And so it's a process that seems endless, but it's not endless. At some point, that process will also reach a point of balance, and you will be free even more and more until you're completely cleared of all these stories, none of which are ultimately true, because they're based on the illusion of separation and the illusion that what's outside yourself is something other than you. And so if you go into a meditation lifestyle and make it part of your life, you're going to give yourself the experience of balance. And in that, you will increase your own power. And eventually, if you stay with it, if you stay positive in your meditations, if you give it your all, then you will develop enough power to equalize the negative polarity and begin your own experience of palpable state of being that tells you moment to moment that you are the same consciousness that everything is. And then you have a love-based experience of yourself and therefore the world. And then you create a loving attitude and a loving expression to share with those in your world, and that makes a huge difference in your experience of your life. It has made a big change in mine, and it continues to do so. Not that I don't run into challenges in relation to that. I still do, because I'm still growing. It doesn't mean that I've reached an end point. I don't know if there is an end point, really, in the human experience, but it certainly does improve and get much, much better. And so I share these contemplations with the focus that, or the intention that might stimulate someone to take it to heart and to explore and to try it out for themselves. I don't want anybody to believe anything. I want them to try something and find out for themselves, because that's really what meditation is all about. It's not about believing anything. It's about going into yourself, exploring yourself, opening yourself up to the truth of who you are, and maintaining a focus in duration, which is very difficult for people to do in the beginning because we're not used to holding a single thought. Our minds are busy, busy, busy. We change one thought, we change our perspectives, second to second, millisecond to millisecond. And so with a busy mind being dominant in our experience, if we don't meditate, the stories that we are telling are coming so fast and so furious, you might say, that we're caught up in a whirlwind of an ever-changing negative reality. Basically, that's really what it all amounts to. So when you're living that kind of a life, what you think is a very happy moment in reality might be a very depressed moment. But in relation to your experience, within the realm of depression, let's say, you might have your ups and downs in that realm, but never outside of that realm. Because real joy, true joy, the bliss of consciousness that's within you, that you are, cannot be expressed or experienced as long as the dominant negative polarity dominates the positive polarity. We are living in a field of polarized experience, and that's what it's for. It's so that consciousness can pretend to be what it's not, and then in that experience it can come to realize what it is again, and to relinquish the game of pretense, pretending to be an isolated human being in a world populated by other human beings, etc., etc. So it's just a game going on, although when you're in it, it's a very real game, and we're here to play it. And part of that play is meditation and developing balance and growing yourself out of the illusion of separation so that you can begin to experience your own truth through the expression that you are while you're still alive. That's the whole point of developing a meditative lifestyle. It seems like a dull, difficult, impossible thing to do if you're still mired in busy, busy mind all the time. And yet, if you do meditate, you will have experiences, if you stay with it, that will tell you that what you're doing is working. I remember in my beginning days of meditation, I was never consistent. I would meditate one day and then take a day off, or I would forget one day and just didn't feel like it, and so forth and so on. And yet, I stayed with it anyway. Whenever I could get myself to meditate, I did so. And in that, which seems like a pretty weak start, even then, I had experiences that validated what I was doing. I would have a very blissful experience and I would know then that even though in my eyes I wasn't doing very well, I was doing something, and that something mattered, and that something was bringing me to experience myself in ways that I could never even dream of. And so, who am I with my stories? You can be just about anything with your stories, but if you meditate and focus on creating your story in a positive way, which is what meditation really does, eventually that practice will yield results that you will always cherish through the rest of your life. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today, Who am I with my stories? You are who you choose to be. So with that, I'll leave you till next Monday when I'll come back again and share another contemplative focus with you.